The throne room of the Valorian Empire was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It stretched for nearly a mile in every direction, and the ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath its crystalline dome. 3 suns shone through the transparent walls and cast long shadows across the polished obsidian floor. Thousands of attendants normally filled this space with movement and sound and purpose. But today the throne room was silent and empty, except for a single figure sitting motionless upon the ancient seat of power. Empress. Cythera Velkith had ruled the Valorian Empire for 400 years. Her species lived for nearly 1,000 years, and she was considered young for a ruler. She had guided her people through 3 wars and 2 economic collapses and a plague that had killed millions. She had faced every challenge with strength and wisdom, and her people loved her for it. But none of those trials had prepared her for this. Her daughter was dying. Princess Nithira was only 40 years old, which made her a child by Valorian standards. She had been born with a rare condition that affected only 1 in 10 million of her species. The neural lattice that connected her mind to her body was slowly breaking down. Every day, she grew weaker. Every day, more of her functions failed. The finest physicians from 32 worlds had examined her. The most advanced medical technology in the galaxy had been used to try to save her. Nothing had worked. The Empress sat on her throne, with her 4 luminescent eyes dimmed to pale amber. This was a sign of grief so profound that even her closest advisors dared not approach her. She had not eaten in 3 days. She had not spoken in 2. She simply sat and waited for the inevitable end. Of everything she loved, far above the planet in orbit around the Valorian homeworld, a small ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was called the Constellation, and it belonged to a species that most of the galaxy considered barely worth noticing. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. The Valorian Empire had been doing so for 9,000. To the ancient powers of the galaxy, humans were children playing at Civilization Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Constellation and looked down at the planet below. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with gray hair beginning to show at his temples. He had spent 20 years in the Earth's diplomatic corps, and he had visited dozens of alien worlds. But he had never seen anything quite like this. The Valorian homeworld was beautiful beyond description. Its surface was covered with cities that glowed like jewels and forests that shimmered with bioluminescent light. Massive structures floated in the upper atmosphere, supported by technology that humans could not even begin to understand. This was a civilization that had mastered the secrets of the universe while humanity was still learning to make fire. "We have received landing clearance," said his communications officer. "They are directing us to the diplomatic quarter." Daniel nodded. "Tell Dr. Morgan to meet me at the shuttle bay. We have a ceremony to attend." Dr. Lisa Morgan was the chief medical officer of the Constellation. She was a woman in her late 30s with short brown hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had joined Daniel at the shuttle bay wearing her formal uniform and carrying a medical kit out of habit. She never went anywhere without it. "Do you know what this ceremony is about?" she asked as they boarded the shuttle. "Standard diplomatic protocol," Daniel replied. "We present our credentials to the Empress, and she acknowledges our presence. Should take about an hour. Then we can get back to our actual mission, which is negotiating trade rights for mineral resources." In the outer systems, the shuttle descended through the atmosphere and landed on a platform that seemed to be made of solid light. Valorian attendants met them and guided them through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that made no logical sense. The architecture of this place was designed for beings who thought differently than humans did. They were brought to a small waiting chamber and told that the Chancellor would see them shortly. Daniel sat down and prepared himself for a long wait. Alien bureaucracies were the same everywhere. But when the Chancellor finally arrived, his demeanor was not what Daniel had expected. The Valorian official was tall and thin, with silver scales covering his body and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond, a pattern on his elongated face. Normally, these officials carried themselves with pride and superiority. This one looked exhausted and sad. "I apologize for the delay," the Chancellor said. "These are difficult times for our empire." "We understand," Daniel replied carefully. We are honored to be received at all. Chancellor's four eyes blinked in sequence. I must inform you that the Empress will not be able to meet with you personally. She is occupied with a private matter of great importance. I will accept your credentials on her behalf. This was unusual. The Empress always received foreign diplomats personally. It was a matter of protocol that had not been broken in centuries. Daniel glanced at Lisa and saw the same curiosity in her eyes. May I ask what has happened? Daniel said. If there is anything Earth can do to assist the Empire during this difficult time, we would be honored to help. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with sorrow. Oh, the princess is dying. She suffers from a degenerative neural condition that has no cure. Our physicians have tried everything. There is nothing more to be done. The Empress spends every moment at her daughter's side, waiting for the end. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He was a father himself. He had a daughter back on Earth who was about to start university. He could not imagine watching her die slowly while being powerless to stop it. I am deeply sorry, he said. We will complete our business quickly and leave you to your grief. They finished the formal exchange of credentials and prepared to return to their shuttle. But as they walked through the corridors, Lisa suddenly stopped. Commander, she said quietly, may I ask the Chancellor something? Daniel hesitated. They were guests here. It was not their place to pry into private matters. But something in Lisa's voice made him nod. Chancellor, Lisa called out. You said the princess suffers from a degenerative neural condition. Can you tell me more about it? What exactly is happening to her? The Chancellor turned back with surprise on his face. Why do you wish to know this? I am a doctor. It is my nature to ask questions about illness. The Chancellor studied her for a moment. Then he sighed. Her neural lattice is breaking down. The protective coverings around her nerve fibers are deteriorating. Without them, the signals from her brain cannot reach her body properly. She is losing control of her movements and her senses, and soon she will lose the ability to breathe on her own. Lisa's eyes went wide. She grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him aside. Commander, she whispered urgently, what he just described sounds exactly like a condition we have on Earth. We call it progressive neural demyelination, and we have a treatment for it. Daniel stared at her. Are you certain? No, I would need to see her medical records to be sure. But if I am right, then we might be able to save her. Daniel looked back at the Chancellor, who was watching them with confusion. He thought about protocol and politics and all the reasons why they should not get involved. Then he thought about the Empress sitting alone in her throne room waiting for her daughter to die. Chancellor, he said, we need to talk. The Chancellor listened to their request with disbelief written across his alien features. His four eyes narrowed, and his secondary arms folded tightly against his chest. Daniel could see that the Valorian official was struggling to understand why these primitive humans would even dare to suggest such a thing. You wish to examine the princess's medical records, the Chancellor repeated slowly. You believe that your species might have a cure for a condition that has defeated the greatest medical minds in the galaxy. I am not claiming certainty, Lisa said carefully. I am only saying that the symptoms you described sound similar to something we have encountered before. If I can see her records, I can determine whether our treatment might be applicable. The Chancellor made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been contempt. Human. Medicine is primitive compared to ours. Your species was living in caves when we were building cities that spanned continents. What could you possibly know that our physicians do not? Daniel stepped forward before Lisa could respond. He knew that tone. He had heard it from 100 different alien officials over the years. It was the sound of ancient pride meeting unexpected challenge. Chancellor, he said in his most diplomatic voice, we mean no disrespect to Valorian medicine or Valorian civilization. We understand that your species has accomplished things that we can barely imagine. But every species sees the universe through different eyes. Sometimes a fresh perspective can reveal what familiarity has hidden. We ask only for the chance to look. If we are wrong, we will apologize for wasting your time and leave immediately. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. His four eyes studied Daniel with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Then he spoke. I will consider your request. Return to your ship and wait for my response." They returned to the constellation, and Daniel ordered the crew to stand by for departure. He did not expect the Chancellor to agree. The Valorians were proud, and they did not accept help easily, especially not from species they considered inferior. He prepared himself to leave this world and continue with their original mission. But 3 days later, a message arrived from the surface. The Chancellor had agreed to share the princess's medical records. Daniel did not know what had changed his mind, but he suspected that desperation had finally overcome pride. When your child is dying, you will try anything. The records arrived on a secured data crystal that evening. Lisa took it to the medical bay and locked herself inside. Daniel gave orders that she was not to be disturbed for any reason. 14 hours passed. Daniel tried to sleep, but found that he could not. He kept thinking about the Empress sitting alone in her throne room, and the little princess lying in some medical wing far below. He thought about his own daughter, Sophie, who was probably studying for exams right now back on Earth. He wondered if she knew how much he loved her. When Lisa finally emerged from the medical bay, her face was pale and there were dark circles under her eyes. But there was something else in her expression too, something that looked like hope. "I know what is wrong with her." Daniel stood up quickly. "Tell me." Lisa led him into the medical bay and showed him the displays she had been studying. The Valorian neural anatomy was incredibly complex, and Daniel could barely understand what he was looking at. But Lisa explained it in simple terms. Their nervous system works differently than ours, but the basic structure is the same. They have nerve fibers that carry signals from the brain to the body, and those fibers are protected by a covering we call myelin. In humans, when this covering breaks down, it causes a condition called demyelination. The signals cannot travel properly, and the patient loses control of their body. And that is what is happening to the princess. Yes, the Valorians call it something different, but it is the same underlying problem. The myelin equivalent in their nervous system is deteriorating, and without it, her neural signals are being lost. Daniel felt his heart beating faster. "Can you treat it?" Lisa hesitated, and Daniel saw the uncertainty in her eyes. "I do not know. Our treatment involves synthetic myelin compounds and genetic therapy that encourages the body to repair the damaged coverings. But our treatment was designed for human biology. Adapting it for Valorian physiology would be incredibly difficult. Their nervous system is more complex than ours. Their genetic structure is different. I would have to essentially reinvent the treatment from the ground up. What would you need? Access to their research facilities, access to their genetic databases, collaboration with their scientists, and time, a lot of time, weeks at minimum, maybe months." What? Daniel sat down heavily. This was not a simple situation. Earth was a minor power in galactic politics. The Valorian Empire was one of the most influential civilizations in the known galaxy. Offering help that might fail could be seen as an insult. Worse, it could be seen as an attempt to manipulate a grieving empress during her moment of weakness. The political consequences could be severe. But there was a child dying down there on the planet below. "Can you do it?" Daniel asked. "If you had everything you needed, could you actually save her?" Lisa met his eyes. "I do not know. I have never attempted anything like this before. The odds are not good, but there is a chance, a real chance. And right now, that is more than anyone else can offer." Daniel thought about all the reasons why he should say no. He thought about protocol and politics and the careful diplomatic relationships that had taken decades to build. He thought about what his superiors back on Earth would say when they learned what he had done. Then he thought about Sophie. He thought about what he would do if she were the one dying and some stranger offered even the smallest hope of saving her. "Request an audience with the Empress," he said. "Tell her we have something to offer." The response came within hours. The Empress would see them. They descended to the planet's surface again, and were led through corridors even more twisted and confusing than before. This time, they were not taken to a formal waiting room, but to a private chamber deep within the palace. The room was small and simply furnished, which surprised Daniel. He had expected something grand. The Empress was waiting for them. She looked nothing like the powerful ruler Daniel had imagined. Her silver scales had lost their luster. Her robes hung loosely from a frame that seemed to have shrunk. Her 4 eyes were dim with grief and exhaustion. She looked like a mother who had not slept in weeks. "The Chancellor tells me you believe you can save my daughter," she said without greeting or ceremony. Her voice was flat and empty. "Many have made such claims before you. All of them have failed." Lisa bowed in the Valorian fashion, with her hands pressed together before her chest. "Your Majesty, I do not claim certainty. I only claim that we have experience with a similar condition among our own people, and that I would like the opportunity to try." The Empress studied Lisa with her 4 dim eyes. "Your species is young. Your medicine is crude by our standards. What could you possibly know that our own physicians do not?" "Perhaps nothing," Lisa admitted honestly. "But sometimes a different perspective reveals what familiarity has hidden. Your physicians have been looking at this problem through Valorian eyes for thousands of years. I see it through human eyes. Maybe I will see something they missed." The Empress was silent. Daniel could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Pride against desperation. Tradition against hope. The ruler of an ancient empire against a mother watching her child die. "And what do you want in return?" she asked finally. Daniel answered before Lisa could speak. "Nothing, Your Majesty. We offer this freely without conditions. If we succeed, we ask only that you remember that humans came to help when we could. If we fail, we ask only that you do not hold our failure against our people." The Empress looked at him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. It was not quite hope. It was not quite trust. But it was something. "You are either very noble or very foolish, Commander," she said quietly. "I have not yet decided which, but I will give you your chance. Save my daughter, and you will have the eternal gratitude of the Valorian Empire. Fail, and I will remember that you tried." She waved her hand, and the doors behind them opened. "The Chancellor will give you everything you need. Do not waste this opportunity." Word of the human intervention spread through the galactic network like fire through dry grass. Within 2 days, every major civilization in the known galaxy had heard the news. The primitive humans from the small blue world called Earth were attempting to cure the Valorian princess. Some found it amusing. Others found it insulting. And some found it deeply troubling. The Galaxy Council was the closest thing the known universe had to a governing body. It was made up of representatives from the 100 most powerful civilizations, and it met on a massive space station that orbited a dying star at the center of the galaxy. The council had existed for over 50,000 years, and it had rules about everything. Rules about trade and warfare and diplomacy, and 1,000 other things. That kept the great powers from destroying each other, and now the council had questions about what the humans were doing. A delegation arrived at the Valorian homeworld on the 5th day after Daniel and Lisa had begun their work. There were representatives from 6 different species, and they demanded an immediate audience with the Empress. When the Empress refused to see them, they demanded to speak with the humans instead. Daniel met them in a formal conference room while Lisa continued her research in the medical facility below. He wore his dress uniform and tried to look calm even though his stomach was tied in knots. He knew that this meeting could determine the future of humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy. The leader of the delegation was Ambassador Crix of the Scythian Collective. He was a large insectoid creature with gleaming black eyes and mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. His species had been traveling between stars for 30,000 years, and they considered themselves one of the elder races of the galaxy. "Commander Hayes," Ambassador Crix began without any pleasantries. "The Council has concerns about your activities here. You will explain yourself." Daniel kept his voice steady. "I am happy to answer any questions the Council may have." "Very well. Why are humans interfering in an internal Valorian matter?" "We are not interfering, Ambassador. We offered assistance, and the Empress accepted. There is nothing improper about one civilization helping another during a time of crisis." Ambassador Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You offered assistance that you are not qualified to provide. Human medicine is primitive. You cannot possibly cure a condition that has defeated Valorian physicians. You are either deceiving the Empress or you are fools who do not understand your own limitations." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept it under control. "With respect, Ambassador, we have not promised anything. We have only offered to try." The Empress understood this when she accepted our help. Another delegate spoke up. This was Delegate Morath of the Quintari Federation. He was a tall, thin creature with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. His voice was cold and suspicious. "We believe your true motivation is political," Delegate Morath said. "You seek to curry favor with one of the galaxy's great powers. You are using a dying child to advance your species' position." In galactic affairs, Daniel felt the anger grow stronger. He thought about Lisa working around the clock in the laboratory below. He thought about the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hands shook from exhaustion. He thought about how she had not slept more than 3 hours at a time in 5 days because she was trying to save a little girl she had never met. "Delegate Morath," Daniel said slowly, "I understand that you do not know us very well. Humanity's young, and we have not yet proven ourselves to the galaxy. But I promise you that we are not here for political advantage. We are here because a child is dying, and we might be able to help. That is all." "Convenient story," Delegate Morath replied. "But we are not naive. Every action has a purpose. Every gift has a price. What do you really want from the Valorian Empire?" Daniel was about to respond when the door to the conference room opened. Everyone turned to see who had entered. It was the Empress. She walked into the room with her head held high and her 4 eyes burning with an intensity that Daniel had not seen before. The delegates from the council immediately stood and bowed in respect. Whatever their suspicions about the humans, they still recognized the authority of one of the galaxy's oldest rulers. "Your Majesty, Ambassador," Crick said, "we did not expect to see you. We were told you were occupied with private matters." "I was informed that representatives of the council were questioning my guests," the Empress replied. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I came to address those questions personally." Delegate Morath stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we are simply concerned about the situation. These humans claim they can cure your daughter, but they have no evidence to support this claim. We worry that they are taking advantage of your grief to advance their own interests." The Empress turned her 4 eyes on Delegate Morath, and he visibly flinched. "Let me be clear," she said. "I am not a fool. I know that humanity is young and their medicine is less advanced than ours. I know that the chances of success are small, but their chances are greater than 0, which is more than anyone else has offered me. Every other physician has told me that my daughter will die. These humans have told me that there is hope. Even if that hope is small, I will not reject it." Ambassador Crick spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, we do not question your judgment. We simply wish to ensure that proper protocols are being followed. This situation is unprecedented." "Then let me set the precedent," the Empress replied. "These humans are my guests. They are here at my invitation. They have asked for nothing in return for their help. If the Council wishes to object to this arrangement, then the Council may take the matter up with me directly. But you will not harass my guests or interfere with their work. Is that understood?" The delegates exchanged glances. None of them wanted to challenge the Empress directly. The Valorian Empire was too powerful and too important to offend over something like this. "We understand, Your Majesty," Ambassador Crick said finally. "The Council will respect your decision." "Good. Then this meeting is over." The delegates filed out of the room one by one. Each of them gave Daniel a look as they passed. Some were curious. Some were hostile. Some were calculating. Daniel knew that this was not the end of the matter. The Council would be watching closely to see what happened next. When the room was empty, the Empress turned to Daniel. For a moment, her mask of authority slipped, and he saw the exhausted, grieving mother beneath. "Thank you for standing up to them," she said quietly. "I know it was not easy. I only told them the truth, Your Majesty. Yes, the truth." She paused and looked at him with something like wonder in her 4 eyes. "Do you know what struck me most about your offer, Commander? It was not your confidence or your technology. It was your honesty. You told me that you might fail. You told me that you could not promise anything. In 9,000 years of Valorian history, No one has ever offered us help while admitting that they might not succeed. Everyone else makes promises they cannot keep. You made no promises at all. That is why I trust you." Daniel did not know what to say. He had not expected trust. He had expected suspicion and resistance and endless obstacles. Instead, this ancient ruler was placing her faith in two humans from a species that most of the galaxy considered barely civilized. "We will do everything we can, Your Majesty," he said finally. "I cannot promise success, but I can promise that we will not stop trying." The Empress nodded slowly. "That is enough, Commander. For now, that is enough." She turned and walked out of the room, leaving Daniel alone with the weight of an empire's hope resting on his shoulders. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks began to blur together. Lisa worked in the Valorian medical facility from dawn until long past midnight. She slept on a small cot in the corner of the laboratory and ate only when Daniel physically placed food in front of her. Her eyes grew red from staring at screens, and her hands trembled from exhaustion, but she refused to stop. The Valorian scientists who had been assigned to assist her were skeptical at first. They looked at this human woman with her primitive tools and her strange ideas, and they wondered why the Empress had placed such faith in her. But as the days passed, their skepticism slowly turned to respect. Lisa worked harder than anyone they had ever seen. She asked questions that no one had thought to ask before. She approached the problem from angles that seemed impossible but somehow made sense. On the 8th day, she failed for the first time. Her experimental treatment killed the test samples within hours. She studied the results and adjusted her approach and tried again. On the 12th day, she failed again. The treatment worked at first, but then caused a severe reaction that would have been fatal in a living patient. She went back to her calculations and started over. On the 17th day, she failed a third time, and a fourth, and a fifth. Each failure taught her something new, but each failure also cost precious time. And time was something the princess did not have. Daniel visited the princess whenever his duties allowed. She had been moved to a private medical suite deep within the palace, where the air was carefully controlled and the light was kept soft. The first time he saw her, he had to fight to keep his composure. Princess Nithira was small for her age, with delicate, silver scales that had begun to lose their shine. Her 4 eyes were dim and unfocused, and she could no longer move her arms or legs on her own. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that monitored her failing body. She looked fragile and broken and impossibly young. But when Daniel introduced himself, her eyes brightened just a little. "You are the human," she whispered. Her voice was so weak that he had to lean close to hear her. "Mother told me about you, Princess." "My name is Daniel. I came to see how you are doing. I'm tired." "I am always tired now." She paused and seemed to gather her strength. "Will your doctor save me?" Daniel felt his heart break a little. He wanted to promise her that everything would be fine. He wanted to tell her that she would be running and playing again soon. But he could not lie to her. He was trying very hard, Princess. She works day and night to find a cure. I cannot promise that she will succeed, but I can promise that she will never stop trying. The princess was quiet for a moment. Then she asked a question that surprised him. "Tell me about your world. Tell me about Earth." So Daniel told her. He told her about the blue oceans that covered most of the planet and the green forests that stretched across the continents. He told her about mountains that reached up to touch the clouds and deserts where the sand glowed red under the setting sun. He told her about the animals that lived on Earth, the birds that flew through the sky, and the fish that swam in the sea, and the great creatures that roamed the plains. "Tell me about the elephants," she said. "I have seen pictures. They look strange and wonderful." Daniel smiled and told her about elephants. He told her how they were the largest animals that lived on land. He told her about their great ears that they used to cool themselves and their long trunks that could pick up the tiniest objects or push down the largest trees. He told her how elephants lived in families and took care of each other. He told her how they mourned their dead and remembered their friends for decades. "They sound beautiful," the princess whispered. "I would like to see one someday." "You will," Daniel said before he could stop himself. "When you are better, you will come to Earth, and I will show you the elephants myself." The princess smiled weakly. It was the first smile Daniel had seen on her face. He visited her every day after that. He told her stories about Earth, and about humanity, and about all the strange and wonderful things that existed on his small blue world. She listened with fading attention as her condition grew worse, but she always managed to smile. When he talked about the elephants, the Empress visited her daughter every evening. She would sit beside the bed and hold neither a small hand in her own. She did not speak much. She simply sat and watched and waited. Sometimes Daniel would see her in the corridor after her visits. Her eyes would be dim with grief, and her steps would be slow and heavy, but she never cried. She never broke down. She held herself together through sheer force of will. On the 35th day, the princess could no longer speak. Her neural functions had deteriorated to the point where forming words was impossible. She could still hear and understand, but she could not respond. Daniel continued to visit her and tell her stories. He told her that Lisa was getting closer. He told her to hold on just a little longer. On the 41st day, the princess stopped responding to anything. Her eyes remained open, but there was no recognition in them. The machines kept her body alive, but her mind seemed to be slipping away. The Valorian physicians told the Empress that it was only a matter of days now, perhaps hours. Lisa had not left the laboratory in over a week. She had pushed herself beyond all reasonable limits. Daniel found her slumped over her workstation at 3 in the morning, staring at a display that showed yet another failed simulation. "Lisa," he said gently, "you need to rest." "I cannot rest." Her voice was hoarse and broken. "I am so close, Daniel. I can feel it. The answer's right there, but I cannot quite reach it. You have done everything you can. No one could have done more." Lisa turned to look at him, and he saw tears streaming down her face. "It is not enough. She is dying, and I cannot save her. I thought I could. I really thought I could." Daniel sat down beside her. He did not know what to say. He had believed in her. The Empress had believed in her. The whole galaxy was watching and waiting to see what would happen. And now, it seemed like it was all going to end in failure. But Lisa did not give up. She wiped her tears and turned back to her workstation. She pulled up her data and began going through it again from the beginning. She muttered to herself as she worked. She drew diagrams and ran calculations and cross-referenced, results that she had already checked 100 times. And then suddenly she stopped. "Oh," she said softly. "Oh, I see it now." Daniel leaned forward. What do you see?" Lisa's hands were shaking as she entered new parameters into the simulation. The display flickered and changed and showed something that Daniel did not understand. But Lisa understood. Her eyes went wide and her breath caught in her throat. "I've been looking at this wrong the whole time," she whispered. "I was trying to replace the damaged myelin, but I do not need to replace it. I need to teach her body to repair it on its own. The answer was there all along. I just could not see it." She ran the simulation again, and again, and again. Each time the results came back positive. On the 43rd day, Lisa emerged from the laboratory holding a small vial of silver liquid. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "I think this is it," she said. "I think this will work." Daniel looked at the tiny vial that might hold the life of a princess and the future of 2 civilizations. "Then, let us not waste any more time." Treatment was administered that night in a procedure that lasted 7 hours. The Empress refused to leave the room. She stood in the corner with her 4 eyes fixed on her daughter's small body as Lisa and the Valorian medical team worked. Daniel stood beside her, though he did not know why. Perhaps he thought she should not have to face this moment alone. The silver liquid was injected directly into the princess's nervous system through a series of carefully placed needles. Lisa monitored every fluctuation in the readings. She adjusted the dosage and the timing and watched the displays with an intensity that seemed almost painful. The Valorian scientists worked alongside her, following her instructions without question. They had stopped doubting her weeks ago. By midnight, the procedure was complete. There was nothing more to do but wait. The first hours were the hardest. The princess showed no change at all. Her vital signs remained weak and unstable. Her neural readings continued to decline. Lisa checked and rechecked her calculations, wondering if she had made a mistake somewhere. Daniel watched the Empress standing motionless in the corner and wondered if they had given her false hope only to break her heart even more. But then something happened. It was small at first. A tiny improvement in one of the neural readings. So small that it might have been an error in the equipment. But Lisa saw it, and her breath caught in her throat. She watched the display and waited. Another improvement, and another. The readings were stabilizing. By dawn, the princess's condition had stopped deteriorating for the first time in months. Her vital signs were still weak, but they were no longer getting worse. The machines showed that her neural functions had stabilized at their current level. Lisa allowed herself to feel the smallest flicker of hope. On the second day, the princess's neural readings began to improve. Not by much, just a fraction of a %, but it was improvement. Real, measurable improvement. Lisa ran tests and confirmed that the treatment was working. The princess's body was beginning to repair the damaged coverings around her nerve fibers. Slowly and painfully, but it was happening. The Empress did not leave her daughter's side. She sat in a chair beside the bed and held Nithira's hand and watched the displays that showed her daughter's life slowly returning. She did not speak. She did not eat. She simply watched and waited and hoped. On the third day, the princess opened her eyes. They were still dim and unfocused, but they were open. She looked around the room and her gaze settled on her mother's face. The Empress leaned forward and touched her daughter's cheek with trembling fingers. "Nithira," she whispered. "Can you hear me?" The princess blinked slowly. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. But there was recognition in her eyes. She knew her mother. She was still there. The Empress broke down for the first time. She lowered her head and wept, while her daughter watched her with confused but loving eyes. On the fifth day, the princess spoke her first word in weeks. It was a single word spoken in a voice so weak it was barely audible, but Daniel heard it clearly. "Mother." The recovery was slow but steady. Each day brought small improvements. The princess regained control of her arms and then her legs. She began to sit up on her own. She began to eat solid food. She began to ask questions again in that curious way that children do, too. Weeks after the treatment, she took her first steps in months. She walked across her room on shaky legs, while her mother watched with tears streaming down her face. Lisa stood in the doorway and smiled for the first time since arriving on this world. 1 month after the treatment, the princess was declared fully recovered. Her neural functions had returned to normal. The damage to her nervous system had been completely repaired. She was alive and healthy, and she had a long life ahead of her. The Galaxy Council reconvened to discuss the situation. Representatives from all 100-member civilizations gathered on the great space station at the center of the galaxy. But this time, the mood was very different. The Empress addressed the council in person. She stood before the assembled delegates with her head held high and her 4 eyes shining with a light that had not been there for a very long time. "For 9,000 years, she began, we have believed ourselves superior to younger species. We have looked upon humanity as children playing at civilization, too new to matter, too primitive to respect. We were wrong." She gestured toward Daniel and Lisa, who stood at the edge of the chamber in their simple Earth uniforms. "These humans came to us without expectation of reward. They offered help when our own knowledge failed. They worked tirelessly to save a child they had never met from a species that had never shown them kindness. They did this because it was right, not because it was profitable, not because it would advance their position, simply because it was the right thing to do." The chamber was utterly silent. Every eye was fixed on the Empress. "I have learned something these past weeks," she continued. "Knowledge alone does not make a civilization great. Compassion does. Courage does. The willingness to help those in need, even when there is nothing to gain. These are the qualities that matter. And these are the qualities that humanity has shown us." She turned to face Daniel and Lisa directly. "Commander Hayes, Dr. Morgan, on behalf of the Valorian Empire, I thank you. Your names will be recorded in our histories. Your people will always have friends among the stars, and my daughter wishes me to tell you that she has not forgotten your promise about the elephants." Daniel smiled. "We keep our promises, Your Majesty." The council session that followed would reshape galactic politics for generations. Earth was granted observer status in the council. This was the first step toward full membership. Trade agreements were proposed, and cultural exchanges were initiated. For the first time, humanity was spoken of not as a curiosity, but as a civilization worthy of respect. When Daniel and Lisa finally returned to the constellation, they found a message waiting for them. It was from the princess. The message contained a drawing rendered in the Valorian artistic style. It showed two figures standing beneath three suns. One was tall and clearly human. One was small and clearly Valorian. Between them stood a creature with great ears and a long trunk beneath the drawing in. Careful letters that someone had helped her write were three words in English.
"Thank you."
Friends. Daniel placed the drawing in his quarters, where he would look at it often in the years to come. It would remind him of what humanity could be when it chose compassion over calculation, when it reached out across the void not to conquer but to heal. 3 years later, a small Valorian shuttle landed on Earth. The princess stepped out onto the grass of an African savanna with her mother beside her. Daniel was there to greet them just as he had promised. They walked together through the tall grass until they found what they were looking for. A family of elephants moving slowly across the plain. The great creatures stopped and looked at the strange visitors with wise, ancient eyes. The princess watched them with wonder on her face. She reached out her hand as if to touch them across the distance. "They are more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "I told you that you would see them someday." The princess looked up at him with all four of her eyes shining bright. "Yes," she said, "you did. And humans always keep their promises." The elephants moved on across the savanna, and the princess watched them go. Somewhere far above, in the endless dark between the stars, the galaxy continued to turn. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and won and lost. But on this small blue world, a little girl from another civilization stood, watching elephants and smiling, and that Daniel thought was worth everything.